Hey, crazy friends.
Hey guys.
It's Jay and Francis with Find Your Crazy. We are a family of 9 who live full-time in our RV with 6 of our kids, 2 dogs and a turtle as we travel around the nation to see every national park. Today we're continuing our adventures in the Black Hills. We've already talked about Custer State Park. We've already talked about Wind Cave, Jewel Cave, Mount Rushmore, and yet we're still not done in the Black Hills.
Nope.
There's so much to do there. And we're going to finish with a national monument. In fact, it's the nation's first national monument, Devils Tower, and it is amazing. And for a former pastor to recommend something called Devils Tower, you know it's got to be good. So stay tuned and find out why. So we did have an amazing couple of days at Devils Tower. It really was just kind of a side trip for us. If you're going from Custer and the Badlands over to Yellowstone, which is where we were headed, you pass really close to it. It was only an hour and a half or something out of the way, and
it's
so
worth it for
totally
sure.
worth it.
Yes.
It is one of those things that we've probably all seen pictures of, but one of those things that the pictures don't do justice to this just spire of rock jumping out of the valley. I mean,
all by itself.
It's so
nothing else around
crazy. The first time when you're driving in and you turn the first corner and see it, it just takes your breath away. I mean, it doesn't even look real. Yeah.
No, and the way that it's even constructed is really neat too. It's kind of like a honeycomb of these different types of spires of rock. And so just the sheer geology of it, how it's put together is really very unique.
Geologists actually can't even agree on how it happened. Like some think it was a volcanic plug, some think it was pushed up by lava. But it is, even though it looks like one huge tower, it is all of these columns of 4, 5, 6, and 7-sided columns that are all kind of squished together. You can't really see that from a distance, but when you get up on it, it really sticks out. It's
and
really
so
neat
when
to see.
one of these falls down, and you'll see just a lot of the rock and debris that has fallen down, the boulders around. When one falls down, it keeps the rest of it just almost in perfect, symmetry. It's really very interesting to look at it as how some can even fall, and even pieces of it will fall down, and yet leave the rest of it. And it really kind of opens your eyes a little bit to kind of the construction inside of it. It's very. I have a minor in biology, so it was really very interesting to me to see this because I thought it was just one huge piece of rock, but it's not. So you really need to plan a trip.
So that is obviously our first must-see of this trip is the Devils Tower. I mean, that's what you're going there. Yeah, that's what you're going there to see. That's what there is to do. But it is absolutely our first must-see. And we say that because we really would encourage you to not just go to it, but to stay at it. And so that's our first family pro tip. We stayed, and we would encourage you to stay at the KOA that is just at the base of the tower. I mean, it is literally their store parking lot touches the entry station.
Right.
I mean, it is
you
that
can
close.
Walk from the entrance gate to the National Park sign, and you are in the shadow of this incredible rock feature.
Yeah, to be able to sit outside of your RV, your tent, your cabin, whatever you're renting there, and there it is. Just to see the sunset behind it.
Now that is powerful because the sun does set behind it faster than anything else, and so you just get this wonderful glow about it. And we cooked outside and we sat there, and the nice thing is it was still really hot, so we had left and kind of gone into where Devils Tower is, and it was like 108 degrees. I think our car was registering during the day, but when the sun drops behind Devils Tower, it cools off. It is the perfect place for a picnic dinner or a cookout, and really just to sit at your table, and all the spots can just look up, and it is a sight to behold.
There's a lot of great advantages also of just staying at that KOA. We enjoyed a ton of them. One is it's got a pretty big gift shop, but it's also got a neat little restaurant that we went and ate in. They have bison burgers.
Yeah, that was the first for some of ours.
That we had eaten a bison burger, so that was a kind of really super neat experience that you should get. And then if you're a movie buff, you know that Devil's Tower is really kind of the central backdrop to Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And so you really should watch that. But if you go to this KOA, they show it every single night. They've got a kind of a patio off of the edge of the restaurant with the TV there, and it literally is right behind you. So you're watching the movie with Devil's Tower right behind you in the shadow of it, basically.
Super fun.
A lot of neat things about being at that KOA. But one thing that's really a big advantage, and this is our next family pro tip, is if you're going into the park, and obviously you should, you need to go early.
Very
and
early.
Being right there at the base of it really helps facilitate being in the park early.
We didn't really realize that, and I'm not talking 7 o'clock in the morning early. Not at all. I mean,
like
that's not us.
10.
We can't get our gang together before about 10 o'clock anywhere, anytime, no matter what time we wake up. And so I'm not talking get there at the crack of dawn, unless you're a morning person and you want to beat the rush. But around 10 o'clock is a good time to go, because when we came out, we had no idea there was a line of cars
further than you could see.
Further than we could see, lined up to get in, because the parking is very limited. Very limited parking.
And I would say another advantage of being there, we stayed like 3 days at the park, even though we only went in the KO, even though we only went one day, and it was like that every single day, backed up in the afternoon. And so being right there lets you just turn right in. And then the nice thing, if you do have an RV, it lets you park your RV and not take it up. There's very limited RV parking at the top. There is some, but I can tell you, Loca's 39 feet. I would not want to have
but if you've got a small Class C or something like that, where you're just really stopping by for a couple of hours, because you don't need a ton of time. And we did some other things. We just enjoyed staying a few extra days. But I will say, you don't need tons of days there.
It's a half day kind of experience.
So if you do have a smaller RV and you really just want to make a stop off, the nice thing is you can go up there. You really need to check any of the restrictions. We did not check into that, but you just need to check and make sure that you can. But if that's the case, you probably need to get there earlier than 10 o'clock. So, because we saw it, there was already camper parking and it was full.
So once you're ready to head up to the mountain, there's actually several things that you can do along the way. And so rather than just driving to the tower, as you're driving around the bottom, as soon as you go in the park, there's actually a huge prairie dog town that is right along the road. And so we had seen a ton of prairie dogs, but we still stopped to watch them. But if you haven't yet, it's a great place to pull over
Your kids
and
will
watch.
love them.
Their dens, holes are right up to the road. So, I mean, literally, like, you park in the thing and stand there, you can walk 10 or 15 feet out into it, and they are literally all around
over there. It's so much fun for kids, for families, any animal lovers. You're going to want to make sure you pass by it.
And then as you're going just a little bit further, there's also a really nice picnic area if you time out your visit right, so that you can sit there. And at that picnic area is a super neat sculpture. A Japanese artist did a sculpture to honor the Native American history of the tower, and so it's designed to look like the first wisp of smoke out of a peace pipe. It's called Whispers of the Wind, right?
I think that's it.
And it's super pretty. It's kind of a circle, and like you can see the tower through it. It's worth a 5-minute stop, even if you're not going to picnic.
Our kids love getting out and checking it out and just making sure you look right through it to see Devil's Tower. It's really a pretty opportunity to get a little bit more than just the outdoor, but get a little bit of the culture, a little bit of the history, but also a little bit of art. Can't hurt.
And the history of the tower is really super neat, talking about the Native Americans. So the Native Americans don't call it Devil's Tower. So really kind of funny story with that. So the Native Americans call it Bear's Den or Bear's Lodge, Bear's Tower. There's a couple of different variants that they use. But so what's really funny is the first time that Americans really explored this area, there was a team, it was actually an offshoot of the group that was looking at Yellowstone. They found it and came back and said, we need to go really survey this. And so Colonel Dodge, who was this American general who they sent out with this group, and he had a Native American interpreter with him. And so they're going in, and basically the interpreter misinterpreted the Indian name. And so he told the general that it was called Bad God's Tower instead of Bear Lodge. And so it just stuck. And so the Colonel Dodge didn't really like bad gods. Obviously, bad god to us is the devil, and so he called it Devil's Possessive Tower. Well, again, as we said, it's the very first national monument, but when Roosevelt signed the document, he left out the apostrophe, and so now it's Devil Multiples Tower. And so really unique history with the Native Americans and just the name. I mean, just lots of neat stories.
And a lot of that is on, another thing that we really think is important for you to do is to do not just the Devil's Tower, but make sure that you do the trail that goes around it, because we learned a lot of that information from that trail.
Once you get to the top, our next must-see is Tower Trail.
Yes.
So it is the loop. It's only about 1.5 miles, and it goes all the way around the base of the tower. There's a little bit of elevation gain at the beginning, but once you kind of get up to it, it's really pretty level.
It's paved
most of the way around. It's paved most of the way. Obviously, most of it's in the shade. I mean, you're going around a giant tower, so at least half of it's going to be in the shade. But the trees make sure that a lot of it's in the shade. So it was
beautiful lookouts over the grasslands and the prairies, and it really has a lot of the history, a lot of good information about the geology, about the makeup, and that's where we learned a lot with our kids, because it's not a ton to do there. And so, you know, stop along the way and really enjoy your time, because there isn't a lot knocking on your door for time, but you want to make sure that you take yours and really kind of.
But if you've got kids, our next must-see, or must-do rather, when you're on that trail, you need to plan some extra time to let the kids climb up into the Boulder Field.
You can do that.
So you have to register if you're going to like actually climb the tower, but you can climb all the way through the Boulder Field just anytime you want to. And so me and the kids went out in it, and I mean, like, we probably spent 30 minutes scrambling around, and when we said, hey, let's just keep walking, they were like devastated. It was like their
finding little caves and little areas,
crawling under them, because I mean, it's these gigantic, like, some of them are house-sized boulders that have fallen over, so there's all these crevices, and it's, you know, it was a ton of, honestly, I enjoyed myself climbing up there with them.
The twins and I stayed back because that was a little bit more intricate than what they could do, but there's plenty of shade, plenty of things to look at, to read, and to enjoy, so absolutely do that. And if you are a climber, you can climb Devil's Tower. Amazingly enough, we actually, as we walked around,
that's one of the neatest things. Yeah, one of the neatest things when you're walking around is seeing these climbers. Because it's not only amazing that they're climbing it, but when you see them, you really get perspective to how big this 900-foot tower is, because they're tiny.
You have to really look hard. And we actually got to see and hear a little bit about some who had been climbing that we saw. And they were down at the bottom kind of refueling and rehydrating. And so they were sharing a little bit about the intricacies of that. But you can. So if you are a climber and you are pretty proficient at that and you want to conquer something pretty iconic, you can register and you too can climb Devil's Tower.
But even if you're not, like, so watching the climbers climb, and then what's really interesting is, so the very first recorded people to climb it were a couple of ranchers that climbed it in the 1800s. And so
can you imagine?
Basically, because of how iconic this is, it got to be a festival that all of the ranchers around there would come together on the 4th of July every year and have basically like a big 4th of July picnic celebration. So these two ranchers decided one year, hey, next year we're going to climb that thing. And so they built a 300-foot wooden ladder that they propped up against the side of it. And then from that point forward, they built these wooden pegs that they drove into cracks and basically made this wooden ladder that they climbed all the way to the top. And then the next year, one of their wives climbed up it, being the first woman to climb up it. And so it was super, super neat. And I say that because halfway around the trail, they have some scopes set up, and you can actually look through them and see the remains of some of those ladder spikes. Super, super, super neat. And so then, you know, once you do that, you're really kind of exhausted everything that's there. If you do have kids, we would really recommend the Junior Ranger program. We do it at every national park or monument that we go to, but this one specifically just had some of that neat history and some of that neat geology that was in there. And so our kids really, really enjoyed it. And the badge has a picture of the tower on it, so they thought that was super cool. So if you've got kids under 12, that's really
and I would say, you know, we visit, we're we're visiting a lot during this kind of new time in our country and our world of COVID. So here's what I would say to you. If you have a need to wear a mask outdoors, or need to be careful about anybody that you're around, if you have a compromised immune system or in a kind of at-risk category, you probably need to bring your mask. And here's what I'll tell you. The trail is very, very narrow. So you're really close to people. You're kind of sliding by and passing people back and forth. So because of that, if you are needing to make sure that you keep yourself super duper safe, please make sure just to put it in your back pocket or put it on your wrist, and just make sure you have it so that you're comfortable, because there were a lot of times where you're kind of passing pretty close, and so we just want to make sure to pass that on. That's a good tip if you feel the need for that, and you can't hurt just to bring it with you, and that way if you get uncomfortable or if it is a crowded day up there, that you make sure that you keep yourself safe and you're comfortable with your experience, and it's a positive one for you.
You definitely want to be prepared when you go, which last funny story. So talking about being prepared at Devils Tower, this is hilarious. So in 1941, as part of a publicity stunt, a man skydived onto the top of the tower, and he was supposed to rappel down, and they sent a rope. Why he didn't carry it with him, I don't know, but they tried to throw it separately onto the top, and it missed. And he spent 6 days stranded on top of the tower. No food, no water, 50-mile-an-hour winds, until a climbing team could climb up and rescue him. So
don't be prepared.
Don't be that guy. So we had a super, super fun time. And we really feel like you will as well. So check out some of our adventure.
Okay, so as you can see, it was amazing. We've had so much fun there.
Yep.
And you know, the nice thing is there are some times when it just is a quick trip and there's just one thing to see and you don't feel like you're running yourself ragged. You have one goal there and you can take your time and really just focus on it. When we were in Custer, we had so many things to see. It was kind of nice to have one singular focus on this trip, and that's what Devils Tower will offer you. Some fun little shops to go in, some bison burgers to eat, and maybe a little iconic movie trivia that you can watch yourself right out in front of Devils Tower and get that song stuck in your mind all trip long. But we're so glad that you joined us, and so would you please join our community? We have such a precious community, so make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss any of our travels to all the national parks and the things in between, and our RV family life tips of all the things we're finding helpful, and also our crazy faith that we offer every Sunday. And we'd love for you to give us a little thumbs up if this was helpful to you and you'd like to see more of this. We'd love for you to have a thumbs up, and also just continue to join us on our crazy journey journey with our crazy family as you journey on your crazy journey with your crazy family. See you next time, guys.